Excellency Suzuki Kazuhiro, dear speakers from Japan and Turkey, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, good morning for Turkey and good afternoon for Japan. It's a great honor for me to welcome you. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19, we organized this panel online. We hope to welcome you in Turkey again in near future. Today's topic is from Mediterranean Sea to the Japan Sea, maritime issues, industrialization, and marine resources. I think we can translate in Japanese like this. Chichukai kara Nihonkai e umi o meguru shomondai sankyoka to kaiyo shigen. I would like to thank Japanese Embassy in Ankara, especially Ambassador Suzuki Kazuhiro and Sekiguchi Yoko for their support and cooperation. This is Professor Ali Mertan Dündar from Ankara University. I'm the Director of Asia Pacific Research Center of Ankara University. Now, I would like to give floor to His Excellency Suzuki Kazuhiro for his opening remarks. Excellency Suzuki, thank you very much, please.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction. And thanks again to you, Professor Dündar, as well as APAM, Asia Pacific Research Center, for co-hosting this year's online symposium with the Embassy of Japan. As you said, I am Suzuki Kazuhiro, Japanese ambassador to Turkey. I'd also like to emphasize that as a result of a great cooperation between our two co-hosts, we've been able to realize very valuable participation of scholars and experts from both countries who are active on the front lines of a timely theme. This joint enterprise between APAM and our embassy was started last year, and the first symposium last March was held under the title of New World in Post-COVID Period. Obviously, we are able to conduct a very stimulating and timely discussion. By the same token, I think we've been already quite successful in selecting a timely theme for this year's symposium. Today, we are going to discuss maritime issues, industrialization and marine resources, comparing the Mediterranean Sea and the Sea of Japan. I'm going to Antalya just after this to participate until the Diplomacy Forum. And today there will be a 3 foreign ministers meeting between Minister Chavushow, Minister Lavrov, and the Ukrainian foreign minister. And as we all know, the Russian military started to invade Ukraine on February 24th. And we've been seeing the worst humanitarian crisis in Europe since the Second World War. The rule-based international order is now facing a critical challenge. I think it makes sense to have a dialogue on marine order, focusing on the issue of marine resources between experts from Turkey and Japan. The countries lie in geopolitically very, very important edges of the Eurasian continent. In the last year's symposium, I introduced the effort towards the realization of a FOIP, FOIP, a free and open Indo-Pacific initiated by the government of Japan. I indicated specifically that for a country like Turkey, located on the strategic linchpin of Europe, Asia, and Africa, strengthening the connectivity in this critically important region through FOIP could be a great advantage. And that's the Asia New Initiative advocated by Turkey and the FOIP by Japan are mutually complementary as a concept. Several months later, our foreign minister, then Mr. Motegi, visited Turkey in August last year. One important point agreed by the two foreign ministers, Mr. Motegi and Mr. Chavushow, was the establishment of a bilateral dialogue on maritime issues. Japan has a maritime boundary delimitation issues with China and South Korea. And we recognize that Turkey is put in a similar situation to the countries such as Greece. I think it therefore valuable for both Turkey and Japan facing challenges related to the ocean with neighboring countries to exchange opinions and share knowledge regarding the establishment of a marine order in each region. I trust it will further strengthen our bilateral cooperation. Last but not least, I must also emphasize that this year's symposium will give an opportunity to discuss marine pollution, marine resources challenges caused by industrialization. At the COP26 summit in Glasgow last fall, our Prime Minister Kishida, participated Sustainable Ocean Economy panel and outlined his various climate initiatives where he explained to deal with climate change as a part of environmental conservation and resilience. I think the term a sustainable sea we will discuss today belongs to the same line of thought Japan is presenting to climate change. The concept of a sustainable sea is also very, very important when we think about marine resources as our food supply, for example. Since our natural resources are facing limit in their utilization, the attention to resources management and its efficient use are becoming ever more indispensable, but neither of them can be dealt with by one country alone. We need an international consensus. And in order to formulate it, a dialogue such as we have today will have a role to play. With all this perspective in mind, I trust that the constructive discussion will be conducted in today's symposium, through which not only scholars, experts, but also a wide range of online viewers could receive intellectual fruits, thereby strengthening intellectual dialogues between our two countries. With this final note, I wish you the best of luck to all of you, and thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you. Teshkara.
Excellency Suzuki, thank you very much. We learned very much. This was not just an opening speech, but very interesting information we got. Thank you so much. Today we have six distinguished speakers from Japan and Turkey. I know that we will learn many new things from them. Before the panel, I have a note for the audience. If you have a question, please write to the chat, and please do not forget to indicate who you are asking. Second, also we loaded a questionnaire. We will be happy if you fill in questionnaire. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Professor Dr. Hakan Karam from Ankara University. Professor Karam is the chairman of the board of directors of Ankara University National Center for the Sea and Maritime Law, shortly DEHUCAM. Today, his topic is maritime problems at Mediterranean Sea and the perceptions of Turkey. Professor Karam, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Dündar. I'm really honored to be participating in this event, and together with all the honorable guests and speakers, I'm really happy to be with you together. I'll try to share my screen, hopefully. Okay. Okay. You can see the screen, I believe. Yes. Everything is fine. Okay. As you mentioned, Professor, I'm the member of the Ankara University National Center for the Sea and Maritime Law. And the topic is slightly different than the one you mentioned. But in any case, I mean, the scope is the same as yours. Because I believe that the agency is a part of the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So then I'll be talking two seas together in my presentation. And then my topic is going to be the legal maritime boundary disputes in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean regions and possible solutions for peace. Firstly, I'll talk a lot about the disputes between the states because in order to settle any kind of, make any kind of settlement for peace, we need to first understand what kind of disputes we have in each other. So the first dispute in between or among the states is the dispute in the scope of maritime border issues. But I will separate it into two, in the Aegean Sea and in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. In the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, there is just one dispute, which is the dispute in the delimitation of exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf. But comparing to the Aegean Sea, in that case, we've got misunderstanding in each other. Our Greek friends believe that there is just one dispute in the Aegean Sea, which is the delimitation of the continental shelf between two coastal states. But what about others I'm going to talk about? There are so many disputes in connection with each other. And because of that, first they need to be settled together with the dispute in the delimitation of the continental shelf. We believe that. So we need to first agree to disagree. Otherwise, there is no possible solution at all. Okay, the second dispute in the applicable law to the maritime border issues. Again, our Greek friends believe that the only law applicable to the dispute is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, adopted in 1982. But Turkey is not a party to that convention, with the reason I'm going to explain it later. According to the Article 38 of the Statute of the International Court of Justice, and according to Article 26 of the Vienna Convention, the convention could only bind the contracting states, but not the non-contracting states. Again, we've got a very well-known principle of pacta sunt servanda. You cannot be obliged by any contract, any agreement, which you are not party to that. So accordingly, we believe that Turkey cannot be bound with the Enclosure, but with the international customary law, which exists before the year of 1982. Okay, but coming to the Enclosure again, Turkey is not absolutely against it. We could leave it 317 articles out of 23 articles. So we have got a reservation against just 3 articles. Article 3, with regard to the breadth of the territorial sea, which means that which provides which gives a right to the states to extend their territorial waters from 6 miles to 12 nautical miles. Another one is a new concept at the year of 1982, which was the contiguous zone in Article 33, and Article 121 regarding the regime of islands. I'm going to talk about later on this issue, which is a very big issue. So apart from these 3 articles, we have no objection. During the drafting process of the Enclosure, we express our objections, but for the sake of unification, the unification of the law of not the seas, but the oceans, it was thought that these objections shouldn't be taken onto the table. So, and there was a kind of ban for the bringing a reservation to the convention or any articles of the convention. So Turkey has no choice not to adapt, not to sign the convention totally. Yes, but as I said, we could leave it almost 317 17 articles of the Enclosure. We understand that the importance of the Enclosure. But in the Enclosure, we believe that especially special features, special conditions of particular seas, such as the agency, was not taken into consideration, and we were obliged to not become a party to the Enclosure. So again, the law applicable, especially for these 3 articles, are not the rules of Enclosure, but the rules of customary international law, which exist before 1982. Turkey is a persistent objector of these provisions as from the beginning. The third dispute between the states is the dispute in the means to be used for the settlement. For the sake of peace, which is very important right now, as His Excellency expressed, because of the dispute between Russia and Ukraine, we need the peace at sea. So there is a need for cooperation in good faith to settle either by an agreement or court decisions. Is there any obligation to cooperate under international law? Yes, there are some in Article 1 of the United Nations Charter, in Article 123 of the Enclosure, especially for the semi-enclosed seas, like the Eastern Mediterranean Sea or the agency, there is an obligation. But I'm not really sure whether such kind of obligation is performed by each country, each side, properly and duly. Coming to Turkey, I must say that especially our president expressed his invitation to the coastal states of Eastern Mediterranean Sea to sit on the table and to discuss the disputes and the settlement mechanisms. But up to that time, I have seen no such kind of interest from the side of the coastal states to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea because of maybe the political reasons. But in any case, there is nothing wrong to sit on the table, to speak about your disputes and the possible solutions to that. We have some talks with the Greek friends. These talks started from 2012 to almost 2021. And there were 62 rounds. And nothing has already been achieved because of these talks. Because it is, as I'm going to explain later on, it's quite difficult to reach a consensus on the sovereignty issues. Because there is a very high tense in each side, in Greece, in Turkey, or other countries in the region. So it's not easy to agree. It's not easy to agree even what kind of court the dispute could be referred. So in fact, from that time, I mean, we must find some other methods for the settlement of the dispute. But in any case, I mean, we need to start the negotiations between the states. Is there any obligation to act in good faith? Yes, under the Article 300 of the Enclosure. But this is good. Acting in good faith is a very good, well-known principle of international law or the law as well. But coming to this map, which was drafted, designed by one of the universities in Spain, and is it drawn on an academic basis? Can you see it is a kind of based on the good faith? From our side, believe it's not. Even though Turkey is the largest coastal lane in the region, which cannot be compared with any other state, maybe Egypt a little bit. and we have no maritime jurisdiction areas at all, just because of one of the islands here. It is about 12 kilometers square. It's maybe more than 500 kilometers away from the homeland of Greece, and just 4 kilometers away from Turkey. And because of this small island, we call it Maze, then we have no opportunity to achieve the high seas and have no wordings on the resources at sea. So it's unacceptable to us because we feel that this kind of map was not drawn in good faith. And accordingly, on a reciprocal manner, Turkey has declared its own jurisdiction, maritime jurisdiction area in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, as you can see, to the UN. So this is the official position of Turkey. But coming to the official position of Greece, we cannot see, because Greece never stated that this map is the official map. And the European Union has never stated that this is the official map of the European Union. But when we consider the documents prepared by the European Union, and especially by Greece, they always refer to this map on their documents. So I must say that this is the official belief, but they don't want to raise it properly and very clearly to the other side, to Turkey and to the world. And again, of course, there is another reaction. This is not official reaction, but it's a very well-known reaction from Turkey, from the Turkish Doctrine, which is the Blue Homeland Doctrine. And according to this doctrine, this area must be within the jurisdiction of Turkey. This is a reciprocal approach to the Sevilla map. But in any case, according to understanding of my center in Turkey, we believe that Blue Homeland, every country has got a Blue Homeland. And Blue Homeland has not been restricted just to the seas, which you have at coast. Even whatever your ships are flying with your flag is your Blue Homeland. And if you have that kind of jurisdiction on your ship or any other resources in the even in area whatsoever, so then you can, this sea could be your homeland from our understanding. But in any case, as I said, this doctrine was there just because of the Sevilla map drawn by one of the universities in Spain, Sevilla University. There is an obligation on the parties not to jeopardize or hamper the final settlement of disputes. Accordingly, there is a Bern Agreement adopted in 1976 between Turkey and Greece. And Turkey and Greece cannot, according to this agreement, cannot make any kind of even research activities, exploration activities, and exploitation activities in the agency. As I'm going to talk, is not the good way for both countries' financial weak position. Okay, there is another dispute in the equitable factors affecting the delimitation of maritime areas within national jurisdiction. Greece believed that only settlement could be done according to the principle of median line. So there is a good expression which states that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Is this a fact? If you like to find the equitable solution as expressed in Article 15, 74, and 83 of the Enclosure, equity is not the only source of equitable solution. So median line is just one of the principal approach to the settlement for the dispute in the boundary issues. There are 3 steps approach by the International Court of Justice. Firstly, we could, of course, consider the equidistance, but then relevant factors should be taken into consideration, like the geographical factors, non-geographical factors, and then the proportionality should be considered equally with other steps. So this is the way we understand should be taken into consideration, not only the equidistance. And not of course, by law, I'm equal to anybody, but I've got some other special features in my mind. Okay, it's acceptable for me to be accepted as equal to anybody on the table right now, but we are not really equal, especially for the states, especially for the seas. Some of the seas has got a more peculiar features than the others. Coming to oceans, okay, it's acceptable, some of the provisions. But coming to the seas like the agency, there are so many islands. Some of them are very close to, especially to Turkish Anatolian side. So which cannot be considered as equal to other seas in the world. So the equitable solution means not the equity, not the median line at all. What about the role of the islands on the delimitation of maritime area within national jurisdiction? We've got a dispute in the meaning of islands, especially as expressed in Article 121 of the Enclosure. From our point of view, the islands in a geographical, within the meaning of geographical sense, cannot be always interpreted islands by law. If the islands, even its rocks or any other features in the geography, could only be interpreted as an island by law if there is a human being or if there is an economic life on it. Otherwise, these cannot be interpreted as islands. This is the Turkish view. This view was accepted during the time before 1982 as customary international law. And because of that, we started to first object the article, paragraph 1 of Article 121 of the Enclosure. Again, there is a dispute in the entitlement of islands of the mainland countries to maritime jurisdiction areas. We believe that the islands within the definition accepted by us can only have the territorial waters, but not the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, unlike the acceptance in the Enclosure. Because before the year of 1982, there was not such a kind of customary international law in our understanding. And we have always object such kind of approach. And there was no exclusive economic zone at that time at all. We can only talk about whether the islands could have the continental shelf or not. And we believe that there was no such kind of common understanding which entitled the islands to continental shelf. So we understand that in our approach, they could only have the territorial waters.
Hocam yavaş yavaş toparlayabilir miyiz?
It's quite difficult for me to. Okay, I'll give you a little bit. There is a dispute in the sovereignty over islands as affecting the maritime delimitation. There was a crisis of Kardak in 1996, and we were just going in war with our Greek friends. And it was at that time frozen. The dispute was frozen, but this is still there. Again, there is a dispute in the effect of the militarization of islands against the conditions in the respected international conventions. We understand that the sovereignty of Greece over the islands were now in dispute just because of their breach, fundamental breach of these conditions. Okay, there is a dispute in the effect of islands of the delimitation of maritime areas within national jurisdictions. Just I would like to state that there are so many court decisions right now in exist, adopted by especially International Court of Justice, especially the islands in the wrong side of the median line cannot be entitled any maritime jurisdiction areas like continental shelf or exclusive economic zone, or even if there is going to be entitled, this entitlement should be very slight. So especially the islands of Greece on the opposite side of the median line, so which could have no maritime jurisdiction areas or very slight maritime jurisdiction areas. This is the belief of Turkey. And there is a dispute in the land of territorial waters in the agency. As you can see, the present situation is the 6 nautical miles, but Greece would like to extend it to 12 nautical miles according to the law principle accepted in Article 3 of the Enclosure. And in this case, the high seas are gonna be reduced from 50% to 20%, and our territorial waters are going to be increased just 1%. Comparing to Greece, at that time, there is a very high percentage. We are talking about 30% increase in the case of Greece. Anyway, coming to the dispute in the delimitation of Eastern Mediterranean Sea, everything has already been started because of the bilateral actions from the Greek part of Cyprus. And because of these unilateral actions, Turkey has reciprocally approached the matter, not only on the behalf of Turkey, but on the behalf of the Turkish nationals in the northern part of Turkey. If there is going to be any question, I'm going to explain this thoroughly much more. But in any case, the approach, unilateral approach from the southern part of Cyprus is wrong with several reasons. First, Cyprus cannot take, southern part of Cyprus cannot take the big role in the area because there is a dispute in the island, first. The second, according to, considering the coastal size of Turkey, Turkey must be having one of the biggest role in the area comparing to any other states. So because of the mutual agreements between southern part of Cyprus and Egypt, Israel, Turkey is started to think that they are outside the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, and all the policy has been based on this approach right now. Okay, this is my final statement. We are talking about the sovereign and sovereignty issues, which cannot be settled very easily. We must find any other method to be used in the settlement. And this method is now within the scope of the Enclosure in Article 74 and Article 83 of the Enclosure. And we could manage or develop the area jointly with the other states instead of delimiting the maritime areas, which is very difficult, which could be either temporarily or permanent. Let's sit on the table together and to start to explore, first explore the area for resources in the continental shelf or exclusive economic zone. If there is something which is good to be exploited, then we should find what kind of formula is going to be adapted to exploit the area for the sake of, for the benefits of the coastal space in the region. If I was told that the coal was the main energy resources in the beginning, but today not. And the oil and the gas are the main energy resources, but not for the future. We need to reach the resources right now in the region, because in future, there is going to be no dispute at all, because there is going to be no resources to be used by each country. So this is the fact right now. And because of that, we have got a joint project with our Japan site, GSPC project and TÜBİTAK project together. The name of the project is the Research of the Joint Management Agreements on the maritime resources in the disputed maritime zones and their possible implementations for the perspectives of Japan and Turkey to be ended in the year of 2023. I believe that the experience gained by Japan, thanks to their agreement with Korea, South Korea, would eventually be used in the region of Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Thank you very much for your understanding and for your taking your time a little bit more than I'm granted. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Karan. Actually, as far as I understand, Turkey is trying to have or get her rights, not benefits or profits, just our rights. Thank you so much. We should, make more, studies on this issue, I think. Yes, our second speaker is Dr. Matsuoka Tatsuro, Chancellor of Shigakukan University. Matsuoka Sensei's topic is for today, utilization of fishery resources, claiming for enclosure toward cooperation in management. Dr. Matsuoka, the floor is yours, please.
Can I have the floor?
Yeah, you can share actually.
Yeah, I want to show my PowerPoint, but it is rejected by host. The message says.
Can you please push the screen share middle of screen?
Yeah, but it's rejected by the host. It is a message.
I see. Wait a minute, please. Actually, no rejection from here. Yes, I think it's okay now.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see your screen now. You can open your PowerPoint directly.
Yeah. I try I don't know what's going on.
No.
Can you see this?
We just see.
This is not my page.
We just see your Zoom, but under the page, there's a PowerPoint icon. Can you please click it? Yeah. Yes, I think this is yours, right?
Is it coming? Yes, this is
all right.
mine.
Okay.
Yep. The
Ankara Daigaku Dakara. Okay.
Is it okay now?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very sorry to.
It's okay, Professor, please.
Yeah, my name is Matsuoka. Should I say good afternoon or good morning? But anyway, I'm fishery scientist, and then I'm going to talk about how to utilize the living resources, right? And then this is a list of my presentation topics, and then I explain briefly about the the history of the oceanic or fisheries international management regime. And also I show some results of my researches. The one is about, sorry. Yeah, I want to show the pointer, but yeah. Okay, I go to the next slide. And then this is the history of the change in ocean or fisheries management framework. And then particularly after the World War II, including the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. But anyway, the point is particularly after the World War II, many countries declared a certain declaration of widening the control of the sea, such as continental shelf or fishery conservation zone, or the archipelagic, the nation declaration as a whole, as such. And in 1957, we had first the United Nations Conference of Law of the Sea, and then in 1982, we had a UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. Actually, I assume this is a time of competition in claiming the enclosure of the waters. In this case, enclosure, the meaning is different from the Professor Hakan's. In this case, I want to see enclosing. It means claiming a wider power or the right to control the ocean areas. And this is one example. Under the Convention on the High Seas, for several nodes, we had only territorial sea for 3 miles, nautical miles, and then can you stop this? I cannot stop this one. Anyway, we had this concept, adjacent high seas. And then in those days, this term was used, the sea adjacent to the territorial sea for 3 miles. And then after the United Convention of the Law of the Sea, now the same term is used, but the meaning is wider. And then now the adjacent means adjacent to EEZ. So then we use the same words, but the meaning is now getting enlarged and enlarged, right? And I said I'm talking about the regime only from the viewpoint of utilization of living resources, and under the Convention of the Law of the Sea, fisheries management or fisheries resource management was based on the scientific evidence available. And then it is very scientific, but at the same time, as I said, there are many articles saying the expanded right of coastal countries to get a sort of control power or sometimes almost ownership of the living resources, even when they are in the high seas. One example is straddling resources in Article 63. The straddling resources means the stock, the existing in and out of the EEZ, or in both the EEZ and the high seas, but both a certain influential power of coastal countries are recognized, even when they are in high seas. And another one is anadromous species. Anadromous species means the fish spawn in inland water, and they migrate down to the sea or the ocean, and then they're coming back to the rivers or mother rivers for spawning again. And then in this case, the right of coastal countries, almost ownership, it is recognized even when they are at the high seas. So then I think those days we had a competition to get a power or to control to living resources as wide as possible for coastal countries. And then during 1980s, we had disputes. Some people criticized negative impacts to the resources by fisheries over the world. And also we discussed what is the best way for sustainable utilization of resources. And then in 1995, we had a Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries published by FAO of the United Nations. And just before that, we had the Rio Declaration at the United Conference on the Environment and Development in 1992. And then definitely, I think this Code of Conduct is under the influence of this Rio Declaration. And then my understanding is now the time it changed from the competition to from competition to cooperation for sustainable resource use. The Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries was just a small booklet, but the contents were very ambitious. And then the very ambitious general principle of the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries is as such. They list the word or keyword like poverty alleviation, food security, or intergenerational equality, responsible manner in fishing, conservation of ecosystems, sustainable utilization, or to minimize the waste by using selective and environmentally safe fishing gear. It is a bit technical, but the protection and the rehabilitation of habitats, the participatory approach in decision-making process, and then and so forth. I think everyone can understand these keywords are under the influence by the Rio Declaration and then the plan of the Rio Declaration, or in other words, the Sustainable Development Goals today. And wait a moment. I said during 1980s, we had disputes, including some the criticism and then the discussion about how to utilize, what is the best way to utilize living resources. And then the keyword was waste. And then we discussed how to reduce the waste. In this case, waste means marine organisms are harvested in fisheries, but they are not utilized for human consumption. And then they are mainly discarded to the sea, or they say sometimes this is returned back to the sea, but it is not true because of their exposure to the high temperature and then the solar radiation on deck for a long time. And then actually most of animals, they die after they are discarded to the sea. And the reason why bycatch appears is mainly due to biodiversity and then the selective and less selective fishing gear. And then this is a typical, maybe we can say the worst case. This is a shrimp trawl, and then there are lots of discard. Usually they say about 15 times of bycatch compared to our shrimp are discarded to the sea. And then another example is we call ghost fishing. And then the ghost fishing means the direct fishing gear removed from human control, remain the capture function underwater. It means some fishing gear are not retrieved by fishers. And then, for example, because of cut of the rope and then other things, and then they remain on the seabed mainly, and then they maintain the capture function. Of course, the capture function is declining, but for a certain extent of time, they continue the killing organisms for time. This is one example which I took this photo by diving, and then lobster entangled on a gill net, which is tangled and lost around the seabed. And then this is a flatfish dead body in the trap. And then the fish bones are scattered at the foot of the artificial reef or fish aggregation device. And then all these are evidences of the mortality caused by ghost fishing. And then this is a very new topic, and then it became recognized during only 1990s and 2000. I was a researcher on this issue those days. And for example, this one, just a sketch of the trap which I observed, and then the size is, this is about 1 meter, and then the 50 centimeter, and 2 entrances, and then the inside of this one, and then the fish is damaged this part. Of course, this fish died a couple of days later. And then for years, I observed the consequences, and then I found it takes about 2 or 3 years for this type of fishing gear to reduce its capture function compared to the original capture function as a fishing gear, right? 2 years or 3 years, and then in a certain extent, they continue killing fish. And for this, of course, we need management, and the management is materialized usually as regulations. And then the fishing regulations are made to the impulse to reduce waste and then recover stocks. This is just the idea, stock, the sketch. And please suppose stock is declining, and then because of stock decline, catch is also declining. And at a certain point of time, now the regulation is imposed, and then we expect the stock recover, and then the recovery magnitude is depending on the magnitude of regulations. And then of course we expect because of the recovery of the stock, and then the catch is also expected to recover. And now we consider what happens to the catch, and then what happens for fishers. And then this is a part of that previous sketch, and then I just extract only the catch part. Okay, please suppose that now again, the catch is declining, and then the regulation is imposed. And then because of regulation, catch immediately decline. And then this is a hypothetical line. If there is no action taken, and then the catch decline is supposed to be like that. So then this shaded area, or this difference, is the reduction in catch due to regulations. And then this shaded part is a loss for fishers. All right. And then this point of time, and then now the catch is going up. And then compared to this line, this is a gain. So then when this time comes, and this shaded area and then this area, these two are equivalent. And then now fishermen's loss and gain are the same. And then for the future, from this point of time, there is a benefit for fishers to benefit due to this regulation. And then it takes time, sometimes years and years. And then if this time is too long, and then, okay, usually we say fisheries management or the regulation, new regulations are for the future, or sometimes for your sons and daughters. But if this is too long, this concept is not convincing. And then first of all, we should not forget, fishers are in principle poor, all right? So then now we need a new concept of management of fisheries with presumption that fishers are very poor, and then it is very hard for them to be compliant or the obedience to regulations. And then under this presumption, we consider the policy of fishery management. And we propose one the concept. That is, we say inferior area, and then the inferior area is where historically poor people lives, and then the poverty is reproduced in most fishing villages all over the world. Fishers have limited capacity to observe regulations. I don't know the situation in Turkey, but in Japan, not only in Japan, but in many countries, compared to the average of the people, the people living in coastal villages are poor. And then I know for some fishers, even the education for their children is a bit hard. And then under that kind of situation, they have no capacity to accept further reduction of their livelihood. So then the inferior area is the habitat of poor and reproducing poverty, and then there are low education, poor hygiene, or malfunction in many countries. And then also their water is influenced by terrestrial discharge of substances of negative impacts to coastal waters from land industry, human life, and agriculture and forestry. So it means that water itself is not safe. So then their catch is influenced by this negative environment. And then the fishery products, there is no safety assurance. And then this is not only fishers' matter, this is hazard against the food security for the people who eat the fish from this area. So then the last message is the policy framework unconditionally recognizing poorness of fishers and supporting their compliance must be established. It means basic concept must be poverty alleviation. And then on this, we should have a new approach in policy formulation in coastal fisheries management. And then we can achieve conserving of aquatic environmental resources, and then subsequently human health and then food security. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Matsuoka Sensei, thank you so much. It's really interesting for me actually. Thank you very much again. Yes, today our third speaker is Assistant Professor Dr. Koray Özhan from Middle East Technical University, Institute of Marine Sciences, and his topic is relationship between change in the marine environment and fishery resources. Dr. Özhan, please.
Okay, I will share my screen right now. Okay. Okay, can you guys see my screen and the PowerPoint?
Perfect.
Okay, great. I'm Koray Özhan. I'm a marine scientist. I'm a chemical oceanographer, but today I will talk about some environmental impacts on the fisheries resources. So thanks for the Dr. Matsuoka. He mentioned some of the issues. Also is in my presentation today. So today I will start to show you some the graphs and the tables from the very recent report. This report is done by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, it's FAO. And let me get my laser pointer. Then I will talk about how this fisheries is declining. So what are the reasons behind that? So the environmental impacts. So mainly there are two environmental impacts. One is like fisheries related effects, and other one is more like climate change related effects. So I will try to give some example about these issues. In general, we know the oceans are very important for us, and they support life on Earth and the many aspects of the human well-being. And they are host vast biodiversity, and they modulate the global climate system by regulating cycles of heat, water, and elements, including carbon. And they also provide the food and minerals, energy, and employment to people. So it's very important for us. And the FAO is a Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And they have a very leading role in international fisheries policy, including through the Committee on Fisheries and the related subcommittees on fish trade and aquaculture. And they also work with a wide range of partners, including governments, regional fisheries, bodies, cooperatives, and fishing communities. And they, in 2020, they released their latest report about the world fisheries and aquaculture. Let's see a couple of the tables from this report. And it shows last like 30, 35 years of the time frame. And what are the changes on the fisheries? So the first part, it shows the captures. So it means like a wild catch from inland and the marine seawaters. And the second part shows the aquacultures, how much aquacultures we have in inland and the marine. So the couple things here I would like to underline. When we look at the total capture of fishes, so it increased from 89.6 to 96.4 in like 35 years, last 35 years. And this increase is around 11%. But when we look at the world population in the same period, it's changed around 40%. So we need to compensate this gap. So we start to compensate this gap with the aquacultures. In the same period, aquacultures increased from 14.9 to 82.1 million tons. This increase is about 451%. So there is a huge increase of the aquacultures. So we can say almost 50%, like 45% of the fishes we consume today, utilize, are coming from the aquacultures. So when we look at the graph, we see since around 1950s, we can see the increase of the capture until like late 1980s. And after 1980s, and we see the stabilization. They reached plateau and it's not increasing anymore. Then after this date, we can see the aquaculture increase. The dark blue ones show the inland waters and the light blue ones showing marine waters. So the both aquacultures are increasing drastically because there's a demanding increase for the aquacultures. And when we look at the fish utilizations and the populations, like how much fish we consume per capita, I say around like 180 million tons of the fish, the captures, and around like 156 million tons are used as a food by the human beings. And the rest of them, around 22 million, is consumed as a non-food users. So non-food users mean they are mainly done for the fish meals and the fish oils. So these fish meals are very important for the aquacultures. So around now in 2000, as of 2018, we have 20.5 kilogram per capita when as we consume the fishes and the other sea products. When we look at the biggest producers, top 10 global capture producers, China is the leading one. It's around like 15%. Then Indonesia, Peru, India, Russia, the United Nations of America, United States of America, Vietnam, Japan, Norway, and Chile. And when we look at these 10 countries, they have a share of more than 55%. And the China by itself is a huge amount. Even like when we look at some regions, this is the second one is showing the Asia excluding China. So even without China, the Asia is the leading on the fisheries and the aquaculture, the production we can see. Then the Americas, South and North Americas, and Europe, Africa, and Oceania. So we know this aquacultures, the growth, they heavily rely on the fish meal and the fish oil, and they are all coming from the industrial processing of the small pelagic fish, the anchovy, sardine, capelin, and herring. So it's a key component of the aquafeed of the salmon, trout, shrimp, and other farmed marine species. And this is the last one I am showing you here. It shows the capture fisheries landing and the Asia and the rest of the world. If you can see, while the rest of the world started some declining trend, but the Asia, the trend is in the increase. So Asia is now started more and more and dominating on the captures and aquacultures. And so the last one here shows the overfish species by time is increasing, and the underfished species. The underfish means there's some like to catch like fewer fish than the maximum amount is allowed. And this underfish species is coming to almost zero, and it's basically like the masking the maximally sustainable fishes. And the classification can be disputed, but we know that these trends are the correct. So in summary, we know the global catches are declining since 1980s, and the state of marine fishery resources based on this FAO's long-term monitoring assess marine fish stocks has continued to decline. And this decline was masked by the fisheries exploiting previous underfish species. However, the number of such underfish species is going towards the zero. So it was like the current situations, and this graph, the map is showing here since 1950s till 1980s. This colors show number of fish caught per 100 hooks. So if you have the 100 hooks, how many fish you can catch? The red one shows more than 10. So by the time goes by, and we can see the fishing areas is more and more spreading around, and we have less and less fishes per hook all around the world. So the main question here, the why fisheries declines. So there are some reasons behind that. One of the biggest reasons is fishing activities related. And the overfishing, highly efficient technologies, the bycatch, and overcapacity. I will give you some little example for each part, and Dr. Matsuoka mentioned in some of them. And the overfishing, for example. Overfishing is the rate of the fish mortality exceeds the natural rate of replacement. Then we call this situation the overfishing. So we know while many general public are under the impression that the pollution is responsible for the declines of marine species, and it has become clear in recent years this overfishing is the #1 the human activity that threatens marine ecosystem. And the second one is highly efficient technologies. So we know the availability of the highly sophisticated tools to locate, harvest, and to process fishes. And we know the many modern vessels right now, they have all these technologies and they can easily access the fishes and they consume them. And then, for example, the bottom, the trough, they do, and like the many modern fishing vessels deploy larger, heavier gears than used in the past, and allowing access to previously inaccessible the fishing ground. Unfortunately, it causes damages in the bottom layer, the ocean parts all around the world. I like this graph here. I will try to explain to you. So we talk about the advances in the fishing technology. So if we start, so that always we see we need to advance our technology for the fishing. So to do that, for the high efficiency, the fishing practices. We do that and we start to get higher catches. So what happens if you have the higher catches and you have some waste, unfortunately? Then if you have the higher catches, it means you have greater food abundance and you lower your market prices. And what happens? So you create some like the wasteful usage. If you have the lower market prices, so you have lower profits. If you have the lower profits, so you need more greater efficiency. So you come to the beginning of the circle. Then you start to continue the loop again and again. So basically it creates lower fish populations in the oceans. And the third one, Dr. Matsuoki mentioned, is the bycatch. Bycatch means the capture of non-target fish or the other marine animals in the fishing gear. There are 3 different types. One is economic discards. These are the species with the low or the no economic values, like such as coral, skate, and sponges. And there are some regulatory discards. These are the commercially valuable species discarded due to some regulations, like, for example, prohibited species, illegal size, or over-quota captures. And also the collateral mortality. Dr. Matsuoki mentioned about those ghost fishing gears. And these are species killed by contact with active or the discarded fishing gears. Like discarded or lost nets can continue to catch fish, the birds and the mammals only become so-called ghost nets. And the overcapacity. Now all these fishing fleets are larger than necessary to harvest the allowable catch. So they were all fishing activities related, the parameters. And the other very important parameter is the climate change and ocean acidification. And we all know what is climate change. Since we know we have the data, we know that this is showing here the global average combined land and ocean surface temperature anomalies. And our temperature is increasing, and our sea level increasing. And the real reason behind this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So when we look at the CO2 amounts in the atmosphere is increasing. And this is showing the global mean sea level rise. And our models and the projections tell us it will not stop and it will reach around another 1 meter increase until 2100. And also, when we look at the sea ice extent, it is decreasing, particularly for the Arctic region. So what happens? So why the CO2 is the problem? So this is my topic. Actually, I'm a marine chemist. I study the CO2, the carbonate chemistry. So when the ocean absorbs this, about this quarter of the CO2 we release into the atmosphere. And so this atmospheric CO2 levels increase, so the levels also in the ocean. So what basically happens? So when the CO2 entering the ocean, it forms the carbonic acid, then it converted to the, the bicarbonate ion. So I won't get into detail, but there are the main things happens after these processes. One is decreasing pH. So you lower the pH level, so you make the seawater more acidic. And you also decrease the concentration of the carbonate ion, because they are important. Sorry about that. So decreasing this carbonate ion is important because they provide chemical building blocks for the marine organism. And we can say we change the pH of the ocean pretty fast. This graph showing last 25 million years, and we can see the decrease in last couple hundred years and the future projections. And we know this lower pH and affects so can we give just 30 seconds break? My throat, or I'm a little sick, sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay now.
Thank you.
So we know this calcium carbonate minerals are very important for the organisms, for the ocean. So since they're also the part of the, the food chain, so their lack of their existence also affecting the other members of the food chain, like the fishes. So this is showing like one of the photo, and these organisms can make less and less the shells because of the calcium carbonate and also the acidification of the water. And the coral reefs, they are affecting because of the ocean acidification. And this is showing how these coral reefs are dying all around the world, particularly like the equatorial region. So how it affects the ocean acidification of fishes? It lowers their ability to detect predators, for example. It causes them to lose their chemosensory ability, like it impairs their smell. There are some other like the issues related to fishes, and when we think about the lowering the pH of the ocean, but altogether it causes the harm in the fishing stocks. And also, there are some other potential like impacts on the physical features of the oceans, like sea surface temperatures, the sea levels, ocean circulation patterns, and salinity. So they are all affecting the marine fishes, like migration patterns, changes in the reproductive pattern, food web effects, and the size reduction. And this is here showing one of the examples how the ocean temperatures affect the zooplankton. And one of the zooplankton can like migrate to the like the cool water, cooler waters, and the other one like to replace it. And basically this population they peak in the fall. But other one is already moved. They were peak sorry, in spring. So it causes the mistiming in the spawn in the spring, rely on the copepods as the food sources. So it's affected basically the fishes. They feed on this zooplankton. And we know now fish are migrating from warming the waters. And this is showing here, this Arctic fishes almost push out to the Barents Sea between 2004 and so they lost the location, and there's an expansion towards the cooler the waters. And this map here showing, this is the rate of local extinctions. You can see the warmest places, equatorial regions, has the greatest rate of the local extinction. So when we look at how is life in the sea affected by climate change, the fisheries particularly in three main topics, and the species migration and invasions, and erosion in the shell-building organisms, and the size reduction. And this IPCC means Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in 2022 report, they claim that the anthropogenic climate change has exposed the ocean and the coastal ecosystem to conditions that are unprecedented over millennia, and this has greatly impacted life in the ocean along its coast. These fundamental changes in the physical, chemical characteristics of the ocean acting individually and together are changing the timing of the seasonal activities, distribution, and the abundance of oceanic and the coastal organisms. So from the microbes to the mammals, from individuals to ecosystem in every region. We know these consequences are very clear. And in the last part, I would like to also give one distinctive example. So we talk about the climate change, and we know this climate change also causes some changing weather patterns in the atmosphere. And how this changing weather patterns affected the fisheries. There is really one nice example about it. So we know when we talk about the coastal regions, like fisheries, and where are the greatest the fisheries places are coastal areas and the upwelling regions. And actually, I would like to explain what's upwelling. Upwelling means like bringing cold, more like the nutritious seawater from deep to the surface. Because always on the surface, they are consumed by the phytoplankton. And when we look at the deep sea, it's always like nutritious and the cold water. So to bring up this cold water to the surface, and the winds are very important, their effects. So if the winds, that this way it goes, so it basically moves the surface water offshore, and it needs to be replenished by something. So it replenished by the cold water from the deep. So it brings basically the free food for the phytoplankton, then zooplankton and small fishes and the bigger fishes. So it increased the productivity. So when we look at these captures, and we see there are some years and there are some like the decreasing floods. So these are coming from the El Nino effects. I just want to explain what El Nino effects. El Nino is an abnormal heating of the Earth's ocean surface in the Pacific, and the opposite is La Nina is the abnormal cooling of the Earth's ocean surface in the Pacific. And their time pattern, when we look at them, they last couple months to couple years. So what happens normally in the Pacific, and this is around Peru, South America, and this is Australia. There's a trade winds here, and basically trade winds, they move the surface water to towards Australia, and it creates upwelling. So with this upwelling, this region is very rich for the fisheries. They catch a lot of anchovies. So what happens with the El Nino? El Nino is basically the weakens the trade winds, okay? Because there's some westerly winds here, it weakens the trade winds. So now it creates some weak upwelling regions. So it decreases the amount of the fisheries in the region. And the opposite is La Nina. La Nina creates like stronger trade winds and the stronger upwellings in the Pacific. So when we look at the Pacific, here, the South America, and this is the normal time. And if you see during the La Nina, it is much colder waters and reach the surface from the bottom. And during El Nino, and actually the accessibility of this cold water and nutrient-rich water to the surface is eliminated. And one of the key, recent key, like the findings show this changing El Nino sudden oscillation in a warming climate. It means in this paper it's explained. So because of this global warming, now there is a faster background warming in the Eastern Equatorial Pacific compared to the West. And we are expecting now sea surface temperature, the higher sea surface temperature variability, and the extreme ENSO events. ENSO means this El Nino sudden oscillation. It means in future, we can expect more and more El Nino events and loss the productivity in the sea. And that's why the Peruvian anchovy populations declines during the El Nino seasons. And my last slide, try to give you my conclusion. We know now fish stocks are declining worldwide, and the overfishing is drastically changing the marine ecosystem, driven by the mismanagement and subsidies. And there are many like the political issues behind this. And the fisheries can produce more food, livelihood, profit, and the taxes if done the properly. And the only way of reducing the impact of the global ocean acidification is a substantial and urgent reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. And we know the international research efforts are required to reduce uncertainties concerning the impacts of the ocean acidification and the weather adaptation could be possible. And thank you for listening. If you have the questions, so you can write it down, I can try to answer.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Koray Özsan. Thank you so much. You are ill, but you continue to talk. Thank you so much. Well, actually, we should make a change in the program because Dr. Altay Adlı should attend to Antalya Diplomatic Forum. So I asked to Mr. Kobayashi, and thank you for his understanding. Now, Dr. Altay Adlı from Boğaziçi University, Asian Studies graduate program. His topic is the Maritime Silk Road, importance of the security of the sea trade routes. Dr. Adlı, the floor is yours, please.
Martin Hocam, thank you very much. Thank you to you and your team at APAM, who's always doing a great job like this. Thank you to the Japanese embassy for the support, and a big thank you to Kobayashi-san for his understanding. So sorry I had to take his place, but you know, and in Istanbul there is a terrible weather, so I hope I can fly actually, but we'll see about that. Today my topic is, and let me share my screen quickly. Yes, there you are. The Maritime Silk Road, importance of the security of sea trade routes. I'll be talking about maritime trade routes. I'm doing international political economy. I'm very much interested in international trade and especially the logistics side of trade. And when we talk about international trade, well, close to 90% of international trade is done through sea lanes. So, well, the world is going around through trade, and trade is done through maritime routes, and therefore the security is important. So I'll be talking briefly about this with a focus on the Maritime Silk Road, part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. So, all right. Yes, international maritime trade, as I said, it's important, it's growing. You know, it's relative to world GDP, it's growing even faster. 2020 has been a year of decline for the obvious reasons, the pandemic, but you can see a higher than expected recovery last year, and this recovery is expected to continue. Despite all the problems, which I'll be talking about briefly soon. And Asia has a very important place. Well, as you can see in this chart, which I have borrowed from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Asia's share in global maritime trade is much larger than the rest of the world. So hence, it makes sense to have a look at China's Maritime Silk Road. As I'm not going to go into much detail about the Belt and Road Initiative. We all have been following it. So a big plan, vision by China to, you know, connect China to the West, to Europe through land and maritime routes. So today my focus is on the maritime part of it, where through port investments and new routes and new shipping lanes, so China is also connected more efficiently to, you know, to Africa first, and then the Mediterranean and Europe. Okay, but of course there are a lot of numbers about investments, you know, numbers about ports and so on. But I want to focus on four things. I want to draw your attention on four things, four dimensions of the Maritime Silk Road. First of all, it's about an attempt for increasing control on the existing sea lanes of communication. By sea lanes of communication, well, that's actually a term, an official term. I mean, describing the primary maritime routes between different ports, used not only for trade or logistics, but also for navies. So basically maritime routes. So first of all, it's about China's increasing control of existing sea lanes of communication. But you can recall that for a long time, much before way before the Belt and Road started, the Chinese government has been, talking about a so-called Malacca dilemma, excessive dependence on the Malacca Strait for China's strategic trade. So a maritime Silk Road is can be seen as an effort where investments along this new maritime Silk Road will be a way for China to increase its control over the existing routes. It's not just that. The second thing is it's also about establishing alternative routes to complement the existing ones in order to mitigate the risk of over-depending on the existing routes. So if Malacca is a problem, so greater control over Malacca might make sense, but the whole point is actually to develop alternative routes so that you don't really depend on one single route. And thirdly, infrastructure development leading to new trade generation. This is an important aspect of the Maritime Silk Road because here we are especially talking about places along the route, countries which were not really efficiently connected to the trade routes. Developing new infrastructure means integrating them more efficiently with the main routes along this along the road. So which means that integrating them through new investments, integrating them more efficiently means also creating new trades, having more trade from and to them. And finally, Maritime Silk Road is also very much related to shifts between modes of transportation. See, these days, actually with the pandemic, we have been witnessing a shift slightly away from the maritime routes to land and railroad routes because of the problems related to maritime shipping, like port congestions, container cost, and so on. And taking it together with the land side of the Belt and Road Initiative. So here we are witnessing a shifts in both directions between different modes of transportation as well. So, but for me, what matters is, dear colleagues, is the security. So, because especially so for the last 2 or 3 years, because the world that we are living in now, for this last few years, is very much insecure. Pandemic, geopolitical risks, wars, conflicts, and so on. So what matters is, if maritime is that important for the world, for the global economy, how do we secure it? I mean, how can we ensure a producer that its products inside a container will move safely and securely from point A to point B? I think there are 3 factors here affecting this. First of all, the economic side of this equation. I call it economic security, but what I really mean is economic security of the shipping routes. I'll come to that in a minute. Then there are direct maritime security threats, starting with piracy, of course, especially in this case when we talk about Asia and the African coasts. But a number of them. And the other thing is, actually, which is covering everything, if you ask me, is the geostrategic environment. Very important, maybe the most important thing these days. I have recently had a meeting with the Turkish shipping companies now about how their Black Sea operations are affected by the ongoing war in Ukraine. I mean, talk about all the threats, economic security, and so on. Well, a war can change everything. Geostrategic environment. So let me quickly say a few words about each of them. Now, when I say economic security, I'm looking at these economic aspects of how secure the maritime routes are, how our producer who wants to ship his or her products from point A to B can be sure on the economic side of the things. Now here, actually, the picture is not that rosy these days. A number of issues actually creating an economically insecure environment for shippers, for maritime transporters and the producers and exporters. Well, rising transportation costs, container costs. So another graph from the United Nations. So recently, look at the sharp increase in the right-hand side of the graph. The container prices, I mean, because let's say, I mean, you're in China, you need to put your stuff in a container and ship them, let's say, to Europe, to Rotterdam. Okay, you need to pay for the container. So that used to be around at most $2,000 per container before the pandemic. Now this graph is until April, where it has hit 9,000. Then it went all the way to 15,000. Now slightly coming back. So this is a major risk. This is a major cost. This is a major, threat, economic threat for shipping. There are many reasons, of course, but basically it's because the whole global economy was shut down. Now suddenly we are witnessing openings. So supply and demand, suddenly skyrocketing demand for containers, but the supply of containers is not catching up with this. Port congestions, I said. Well, similar reasons have led to congestions in major ports of the world. Simply, ships have to wait in line to be processed in the port. And you can see most of the congestion is, on the East Asian coast, in Chinese coast, Japanese coasts, South China Sea coast, in the ports there. When we are talking about the Maritime Silk Road, so you can also see on the map, the port congestion is at the moment maybe one of the most important points that is undermining the operations along the route. Okay, well, so port congestion, well, logically you can say, well, fine, then building new ports, improving, modernizing, making them more efficient, the existing ones make sense, increasing their capacity, building new ones makes sense. So, and here you can think that, well, then Maritime Silk Road, the whole project can be a good thing because they are building new ports all around this area. Well, that's right, of course, but the thing is, all this infrastructure development has been negatively affected by the pandemic as well. So most of the projects have been taken on hold, and others are going, well, somehow, but not that efficiently, and so on. And supply chain disruptions are changing the patterns of trade. So this rapid changes in the patterns of trade is also affecting the maritime shipping part of the picture. So economic security issues, not really a good picture here when we consider the entire geography covered by the Maritime Silk Road. Of course, this is an extraordinary period that you can expect improvements here, but might take some time. Then there are, of course, the direct security threats like piracy, armed robbery. Let me show you something about piracy. This is the incidents from ICC and International Chamber of Commerce and International Maritime Bureau. You see where the piracy acts are concentrated during the last year, 2021. Now, two important things here. This is a problem, obviously. Over the past years, there have been improvements in dealing with them. But this map tells me a few things. Now, if we could look, I don't have it now, but if you could look at a similar map from 10, 15 years ago, you will see a higher concentration of the coast of the coast of Africa, eastern coast of Africa, Horn of Africa, Somalian coast, Gulf of Aden. Now you see very few, yellow dots there. But most of the yellow dots, well, West Africa for sure, but in our case, in the South China Sea part. Now, It's not surprising then that in 2014, the United Nations has declared the South China Sea to be the most perilous, most dangerous waters in the world in that respect. And these are the waters where 70–80% of all the strategic goods that China and Japan are importing are going through. So therefore, that's a major issue. And why is it getting better in the Gulf of Aden? Many reasons, but maybe anti-piracy operations there. And China is taking a part of it. So for China, of course, securing the maritime Silk Road, the routes, and China's own trade through these routes is a major issue. And if you look at the white paper of the Chinese Navy, of the Chinese Armed Forces, called Diversified Use of the Chinese Armed Forces, it says, and not just that paper, but many Chinese documents, official documents says that Chinese Navy is to take an increasingly prominent role in maritime escorts and evacuations and support for citizens, for taking care of the security there, not just the citizens, but also the trade routes, the ships, and so on. So that can be one of the reasons for the improvement there. Okay, but the thing is, so we are talking about a global issue here. So maritime trade is a global issue. I mean, if you're sending your goods from point A to point A to point B, you are spending perhaps half of the world in many cases, okay? So there are many countries, many actors involved. So therefore, if you want to ensure the security of the maritime sea routes, this is not something that China can do alone. If you are talking about the maritime Silk Road, okay, so it requires collective action, and collective action has to take place within a political, strategic, geostrategic framework. So hence, we need to look at the geostrategic environment. I'm talking here about the geostrategic environment within which the maritime Silk Road is and all the security issues related to are taking place. But I'm also, at the same time, I'm also talking about the geostrategic environment, which is influenced by the maritime Silk Road. So maritime Silk Road is affected by the geostrategic environment, and it is also affecting the shaping the environment itself. So a few issues here. First of all, we are going through an age of increasing strategic complexity in South China Sea, Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean Sea. So this is very much, well, South China Sea is obviously the most obvious case here, but not only that. Well, Mediterranean, we heard at the beginning of our conference, Hakan Hoca delivered a brilliant presentation about what's going on in the Mediterranean. So increasing strategic complexity here, which comes together by a number of disputes, especially in the South China Sea, but also include the others, the Mediterranean as well, as we have heard from Hakan Hoca. Okay, and again, the maritime Silk Road is impacting these disputes and being impacted by them in return. So a number of security-related ambiguities, uncertainties. So if we need to give a name to the age, to the era we are living in, I would call it the age of uncertainty. Nothing is certain. What will happen, tomorrow is uncertain. But so the geostrategic environment in this part of the world is very much affected by this. To start with, a lack of an effective regional security architecture in Asia. It has always been the case, still is. Lack of a common ASEAN position with respect, especially with respect to South China Sea. Uncertainties about US engagement here. So does the US even have a policy towards maritime security or security in general in Asia, other than, of course, it has alliances with Japan, with Korea, and so on. uncertainties about what China is thinking about regional security and how China is taking its steps. So these are some of issues, but together with them, we are also going through an age of increasing polarization, which is triggered by the escalating great power competition between America and China. Well, call it trade wars, call it technology wars, call it superpower competition, whatever, but it's a major dynamic shaping the, well, not only the regional balances, but also the global balances. And together with that, parallel to that, we are also witnessing the forming of new alliances or the revival of older alliances, such as the Quad, which also includes Japan, and AUKUS, which doesn't include Japan, but includes together with America, Australia, and the United Kingdom. And so, okay, so geostrategic environment is again one of uncertainty. I'm saying this, well, what does it have to do with maritime security? So this uncertain environment is a barrier against enforcement, efficient enforcement of maritime security, mainly, not only, but mainly because of the barriers it's erecting against efficient cooperation between the parties who are involved. If you look at South China Sea, the first term that comes to your mind is not cooperation, it's conflicts or competition, but definitely not cooperation, okay? And well, South China Sea is home to the world's largest or most intensive trade routes in the world. Now, finally, before concluding, port development has also port development along the Maritime Silk Route through Chinese investments has also a geostrategic dimension. I just want to show you these ports in our part of the world. And I have always thought that Haifa port in Israel is a very important case because, well, basically actually because I had the chance to visit the port before the pandemic. Now, the Chinese have, almost finished or about to complete the third terminal, a Chinese company which will operate the terminal for 25 years. But right next to that terminal, there is the other terminal where the American Sixth Fleet, together with its nuclear submarines and so on, is anchoring. Okay, so big issue. And I had the chance, so big Americans are not happy, of course. And I asked people, Israel officials, when we were there, so, I mean, how can you do this? Like, how can you, I mean, probably you need to keep some kind of a balance here because, yeah, on the one hand, the Chinese are doing something here, but on the other hand, the alliance with America. But he said that this port is very important for the Israeli economy. It's a must. We had to make it. But the Americans were not in a position to support the construction of the port. So we had to work with the Chinese. So therefore, it's about our economy. It is our priority. Okay, but of course, you can see it's an economic priority for Israel. It's important for Israel's economy, the port of Haifa, but definitely it's a major geopolitical issue. You can take Port Haifa and take it, investigate it within the whole larger US-China competition as well. And it's just one example. All right, I'll stop here. That was, my, brief remarks about the Maritime Silk Road, security of the trade routes. But one final word: we are going through a, era where this is perhaps one of the most important things because security of the sea trade routes is vital for the post-pandemic recovery of the global trade. But on the other hand, all the factors determining the security of these maritime silk roads are pointing towards the negative direction, pointing towards a pessimistic direction. At the moment, let's hope things will change. Thank you very much for everybody listening to me.
Dear Altay Hocam, thank you so much. We know that you should leave now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Later
Thank you.
You will send your article to us and we will publish it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Have a good trip.
Thank you very much and all the best. Thank you.
So I should, thank to Mr. Kobayashi Masanori for his understanding. Thank you very much. So now the floor is Mr. Kobayashi Masanori's. Kobayashi-san is a senior research fellow at the Ocean Policy Research Institute of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Today, his topic is Regional Partnership for a Blue Economy and the Sustainable Ocean Strategies and Challenges. So I think Hakan Hocam, Altay Hocam, we should especially invite Kobayashi-san to Antalya with the other visitors. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Kobayashi.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this panel. I really appreciate Ankara University and the Embassy of Japan in Turkey for giving me this opportunity. I hope you can see my PowerPoint slide. Our office, Ocean Policy Research Institute of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation based in Tokyo, Japan, has been working on a variety of projects and initiatives to promote sustainable ocean. We conduct a global ocean dialogue. Our senior management also participate in a prominent ocean dialogue as well. On the right top, it was then Prime Minister Suga speaking to present the recommendation of the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy in December 2020. My institute president was in Brest, France last month to attend One Ocean Summit organized by President Macron of France. I was also attending various meetings, including the one in Nairobi, Kenya, to promote sustainable blue economy. As you see, both Japan and Turkey are the ocean state, but one of the issues was how we can really promote marine ecosystem and environment protection, while at the same time promote sustainable fisheries and the sustainable use of ocean and the marine resources. You see that many European countries have actually achieved a higher percentage of marine protected area called MPA. And now the international communities are calling to achieve 30% of the ocean to be protected by the year 2030. Japan is struggling with 13%, and Turkey, of course, has a way to go as well. One of the challenges was this fishery. Fishery sometimes compete with marine conservation, sometimes can promote the synergies. While the fish catch has been increasing, but in the case of Japanese fish catch, it's been declining over the past decade. When it comes to the fish catch record, particularly for the some part of the areas, I think this was supposed to be showing the, for instance, Indian Ocean. For the Indian Ocean, it was the Indonesia, India has been increasing its fish catch. At the same time, Japan's fish catch was very stagnant in East Indian Ocean as well. This was shown in the previous presentation, but we have to really balance sustainable fishery and the marine resource conservations. And one of the framework presented by the Convention on Biological Diversity is this ecologically or biologically significant marine areas. They have selected number of the sea areas based on some criteria. You see around the sea areas of Turkey, many of the areas are designated as ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, so we call it EBSA. And the Japanese side, we also have area as well, and this can be the basis for exploring the possible establishment of marine protected areas or the area-based management tools. This is MPAs, marine protected areas in Asia, Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. And for Europe, Mediterranean, and Black Sea, you also see quite extensive coverage of the ocean by the marine protected areas. So our challenge is really to how to balance this MPA conservation and sustainable fisheries through effective ocean management measures to achieve sustainable ocean. Trend of top 8 fishing countries. I think a number of speakers already mentioned that China is the leading fishery countries, followed by Indonesia, Peru, USA, and Japan comes at the bottoms of top 8. And you see the declining trend of Japanese fish catch. China itself has already hit the peak. There's a number of observations. For instance, China might have shifted some of the fishing vessels from China to other countries to carry the flag of other states. So these are some of the observations that we also need to look into. When we see the China's seafood trade, you see the both import and exports are rising as well. So it's not that the Chinese are importing fish and consuming domestically, but there is a possible scenario where Chinese fishery sectors import fishery commodities, but then they also export fishery commodities overseas. And you see the export weight and export value, they are rising significantly, to be followed by the import as well. Who are the trade partners for the China's seafood trade? It is actually Japan, followed by Republic of Korea, South Korea, USA, Thailand, and these are some of the countries, Thailand, Hong Kong, trading with China on the seafood. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, or we call it IUU fishing, is one of the threats to the sustainable fisheries. It is reported, for instance, 10 to 23 $billion is lost by the IUU fishing, or it can account for 20% of the world fish catch. A number of the international bodies are reporting on IUU fishing, its threat, and the importance of taking internationally concerted actions to eliminate IUU fishing. This is a diagram just to show that when we see the increased supply of the fish from IUU fishing, actually the supply of the fish quantities can increase from Q1 to Q2. And when we have a bigger supply, obviously the price can go down. So the legitimate fishermen who are supposed to receive this profit actually loses this proportion from their expected revenues. So the IUU fishing actually cause a detrimental economic impact on the revenues of the legitimate fishermen as well. We have been undertaking a policy dialogue with prominent experts and other stakeholders. We hosted an international online seminar with Mr. Ian Navina of the New York Times journalist, who have published a book, Outlaw Ocean, documenting the actual IUU fishing operation in the world as well. We invited the Ambassador of Colombia to speak about negotiations to reduce harmful fishery subsidies that lead to over-exploitations, overfishing, and IUU fishing as well. Actually, there are a number of incidents that are reported as IUU fishing. Australia captured Indonesian IUU fishing vessels. Palau has captured the Chinese IUU fishing vessel in its territorial water. This is another report that the Chinese fishing vessels are catching squid in North Korea's sea, and the North Korean fishing vessels operate in the Russian waters. And then some of the North Korean boats overturned and assured at the northern coast of Japan, and that are called ghost boat. And they say that it may be the violation of the UN Security Council if Chinese fishing vessels operate in the North Korea's water in exchange of some benefits to North Korea as well. So the fishing itself is now considered as like a security issues as well. And on the right-hand side, it also described that there are some actual criminal conducts engaged by the IUU fishing operators. Some of the Indonesian fishermen were tortured and brought to death. And this was reported widely in the year 2020. So the IUU fishing is not just threatening the seafood stock or fish stock, but also the actual life and the human rights of the people who are working on the sea as well. In order to tackle this IUU fishing, the international community, particularly under the auspices of the FAO, developed a number of international instruments. And one of the prominent documents is called the Port State Measures Agreement. And you see both Japan and Turkey were the parties to the Port State Measures Agreement. But at the same time, on the right-hand side, there are actually some of the major fishing countries that are not yet the parties to the Port State Measures Agreement. So we haven't yet achieved these international concerted actions formalized under the schemes of the Port State Measures Agreement. Port State Measures Agreements include a number of measures, and one of the key issues about this catch documentation schemes. Already, United States, European community, they have adopted these catch documentation schemes requiring fishermen and seafood retailers and exporters to have certification of the fish catch to show where and how these fish were captured. MSC, like a Marine Stewardship Council's eco-labels, aquaculture sustainability certificate, Japanese versions of certificate were also useful tools. In the case of Japan, we have adopted, like Japan has adopted the new legislation called Improvement of Domestic Trade of Specific Marine Animal and Plant Act in December 2020. And this legislation require the fishermen, seafood companies to actually furnish the fish catch documentations for the trade of the fish commodities that are designated by its bylaw. This bylaw is being developed currently, and it is currently proposed to include sea cucumber, abalone, glass eel, sardine, mackerel, sauri, and the flying squid. Japan is also a member of the various regional fishery management organizations and agreement. And under these RFMO, we call it regional fishery management organizations. They have developed the list of IUU fishing vessels, and they try to exclude the entry of such vessels into the port in accordance with Port State Measures Agreement. I briefly mentioned this East Indian Ocean issues. This is, for instance, one sea areas that are not covered by the FAO's regional fishery management bodies. And these coastal states, this was actually what I wanted to show at this time. The Indonesias and India were the major fishing countries. So the sea areas, in order to coordinate the fish catch quotas and the fish catch and also the fishery resources management, there have to be some concerted actions under a certain regional framework. I have looked at the various regional organizations that are covering this East Indian Ocean, Asia Pacific Fishery Commission, that has an extensive coverage, and all the countries, coastal states, are the members of these organizations. But as this commission has a large geographical coverage, it is a bit difficult to expect that the APFC have a kind of exclusive focus on East Indian Ocean. Bay of Bengal program only have like 4 countries, and the 4 others are not the members. So you see that the membership of various regional or sub-regional organizations are not necessarily comprehensive to cover all the coastal states concerned in East Indian Ocean. And at the same time, many of them have a specific mandate to work on like a coastal fisheries or migratory fish stock or like a pollution controls. So they do not necessarily have an integrated approach to marine ecosystem management and fishery resource management. So this is one of the institutional challenge. For this week and the next week in New York, there's a negotiations on the newly proposed agreement on marine biodiversity in the areas beyond national jurisdictions, or we call it BBNJ. This BBNJ has a long history of more than 15 years for the international discussions, and it has just started negotiations like 2 years ago. I attended the negotiation meetings for the past years, but this time, unfortunately, I had to be in Palau last week and I have to return, so I had to skip this negotiation this time. But this BBNJ agreement is has already like a draft provisions to deal with these marine protected areas and area-based management tools in the areas beyond national jurisdictions. So when we look at the high sea areas, actually the BBNJ provide a framework where some of the sea areas can be designated as MPA or the area-based management tools to promote some conservation or management measures. When we see this institutional fragmentation and some inconsistency, we see a merit that some of the non-governmental organizations or maybe governmental and non-governmental organizations working together to promote a dialogue to see how some of the sea areas can be brought into a kind of marine protected areas or area-based management tools under the expected BBMJ agreement. And for this, when we look at Indo-Pacific that connects Japan and Turkey, certainly both countries can play a role in supporting governmental and non-governmental stakeholders in having a dialogues and exploring certain management measures. And such schemes would be vital to eliminate IUU fishing, to promote sustainable fisheries, and that are compatible and contribute to the promotion of sustainable blue economies and maritime security. So for the future task, we certainly see the need to promote the conservation and sustainable use of ocean and marine resources. And we have to place this blue economy as one of the priority policy pillars for national and international policies and corporations. And we also need to develop a kind of strategies to promote co-benefit and synergies and optimize trade-off in the pursuit of sustainable blue economy. And Japan certainly has strategic positions in promoting such policies nationally and internationally. And we have to develop sustainability, transparency, and accountability in the fishery sectors at the national and international level. IUU fishing elimination is utmost important policy priority, and we have to strengthen international cooperation, particularly to involve those countries that are still outside of the Port State Measures Agreement to jointly implement its agreement to eliminate IUU fishing. And such an effort has to be addressed at a multilateral forum, as well as a bilateral forum, such as like this one, organized by Turkish and Japanese stakeholders. And we need effective, speedy, and internationally standardized implementations of the catch documentation schemes in Japan and other major fishing and seafood importing countries. And we need organizational, interagency, intersectoral collaborations. We need innovation, research, policy dialogue, and information sharing from international and interdisciplinary perspectives. So this is a kind of idea that I wanted to flag for the discussion and our future collaborations. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Kobayashi-san. This issue is also very important. Today our last speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Ishii Yurika from Department of International Relations, National Defense Academy of Japan, and her topic is issues concerning maritime delimitation in East Asia and Southeast Asia. Ishii-san, please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me in this important event. And I look forward to the discussion, although I am aware that the time is pressing. So without further ado, let me start my presentation. And I hope that you are looking at the slide. So I'd like to briefly overview the law of the maritime delimitation, and would like to share the situation in the East China Sea afterwards. So we already had the presentation on the maritime delimitation by Professor Karan, but I might present a different view on the law concerning the maritime delimitation. Now, I would start the argument by looking at the provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And of course, Turkey is not the party of this convention. Japan is. And I would argue that this convention constitutes so-called the foundation of the maritime legal order, which I am aware that is subject to the dispute. But anyway, Article 74 provides and that the delimitation of the EEZ shall be effected by the agreement, but not the the arbitral agreement, but it should be on the basis of international law, as referred in Article 38 of ICJ Statute, which includes the precedents of the courts. Now, if there's no agreement can be reached, then states should resort to the procedure of the judicial dispute settlement. Now, Article 83 is the identical clause governing maritime delimitation of the continental shelf. Now, let me, I mean, I'm not tracing all the rules concerning the maritime delimitation, but after ICJ issued the maritime delimitation case of the Black Sea case, all the judicial case that is published follows the so-called the three-stage approach. Now, at the first stage, the court would identify the relevant coasts in the area. Now, I actually wrote a paper on this topic that this should be characterized, I mean, this is included at the first stage, but there's a issue concerning the identification of the relevant coasts in the area. But anyway, the court will identify these elements and draw a provisional equidistance line between the adjacent state coasts. And then at the second stage, the court will adjust or shift the line based on the relevant factor, if any. And that relevant factors include both geographical and non-geographical factors, as Professor Karan explained. At the last stage, the court would verify whether the ratio of the coastal line and the allocated area is not greatly disproportionate. But as you may know, this third test is quite loose because there's no single case that failed this test. Okay, so before I begin the overview of the cases, what I'd like to say here is that today we are looking at the distance of the EEZ and continental shelf. But before we came to the distance standards, we had the history of the development of the law of the sea. At the time of the Continental Shelf Convention of 1958, the clause Article 6 designated and that the states should follow the equidistance or the median line if there's no agreement unless another boundary line is justified by special circumstances. But the ICJ before the North Sea continental shelf, denied that Article 6 is a part of a customary international law. now it endorsed that the continental shelf regime itself is a part of customary international law, but to follow the median line formula is not a part of that regime. And in Tunisia, Libya, the court looked at the natural prolongation of the coast. But here, the important distinction between the North Sea continental shelf case and Tunisia-Libya case is that the court actually looked at the geographical prolongation, while in the North, sorry, while the North Sea continental shelf, the court looked at the endpoint of the natural prolongation. Well, in Tunisia, Libya, it said that the submarine extension of any part of the coast is the basis of the maritime entitlement. Now, after UNCLOS was adopted, they incorporated the EEZ, and there EEZ is defined by the distance because the existence of the natural prolongation is no longer relevant. And because of that, the court before the Libya-Malta case, the court held that it only looks at the distance of before from the coast, and the court also held that the geography of the seabed is not relevant to the maritime entitlement, as long as it is within 200 nautical miles. Now, the Black Sea continental shelf between Romania and Ukraine, somehow this year is not correct. It's 2009. The court said that the famous quote that the land dominant sea is that that coastal projections in the seaward direction generate maritime claims. And the coast, in order to be considered as relevant for the purpose of the delimitation, it has to generate projections which overlap with projections from the coast of the other parties. Okay, so this is maybe too short for an overview, but the point here is that the significance of the equidistance principle is that the court will look at the equitable result, and the basis of the maritime delimitation is the distance from the coast rather than natural prolongation. And finally, there's the risk of judicial subjectivity, meaning that the court will consider various factors, and it is not always objectively characterized. But however, on the other hand, the equitable principle, allows the court to exercise its judicial subjectivity or discretion because the equitable, as long as it will lead to the equitable result. Okay, so let me turn into the situation in East China Sea. And in this presentation, for the time constraint, I will specifically focus on the situation of the East China Sea. If the time allows, I am happy to talk about the situation in Japan, in the Sea of Japan, as well as the situation in South China Sea. but I think that we are already behind, so I will keep it very short. So as you can see, there's a natural prolongation from the China and to up to the Okinawa Trough. And here you're looking at Okinawa Islands. And the position of Japan is that every country here possesses a 200 nautical mile entitlement until the area is delimited by the agreement. On the other hand, China and the Republic of Korea claims that the natural prolongation doctrine applies. And I forgot to mention that, but there's a delimitation agreement between the Republic of Korea and Japan, and at the northern part of the East China Sea. They delimited the maritime area based on the equidistance line principle. And then there's a joint development agreement between Korea and Japan in the upper side of the East China Sea. And there, Japan actually made a concession, and the joint development area is situated in the Japanese side of the median line. Now, the other thing that I would like to highlight is that Japan actually takes sort of a specific position concerning the maritime delimitation, the delineation of the EEZ and continental shelf. So you can see that at the Japan Sea and East China Sea, Japan, sets the outer limit of EEZ at the median line of the overlapping area. Now, this is the limits under Japanese domestic law, and I'd like to emphasize that this is not the Japanese maritime and potential entitlement under international law. On the other hand, both China and Korea claimed 200 nautical miles of EEZ and continental EEZ under their domestic law, even in East China Sea and the Sea of Japan. In 2012, Japan received the recommendation from the CLCS, and you can see that the pink areas that was recommended by the CLCS. CLCS deferred its recommendation on the yellow part because China and the Republic of Korea claim that Okinawa-Torishima is not entitled to generate the extended continental shelf. On the other hand, Japan has not established the whole part of the recommended area under its domestic law because there is a potential possibility that the area might overlap with the United States continental shelf. So in a sense, Japan takes the approach that that tries to avoid the potential conflicts with the other states. And in my recent book called Japanese Maritime Security and Law of the Sea, published from Brill, I described its peculiarity and the reasons behind that in detail. The other thing I have to mention is that there is an issue concerning the disputed island, and I may not say that it's disputed, but anyway, Japan and China takes different positions on the territorial title of this island, which is situated in the East China Sea. Now, well, okay, so I think I should not get into the details of the territorial dispute, but the point here is that the issue has been quite for about 40. The issue has been discussed over 40 years, and it has been the hurdle for both states to agree on anything at the East China Sea. Now, in 2008, Japan and China it entered into the understanding on the development of East China Sea. There are two instruments. One is the understanding of Japan-China joint development in the East China Sea, in this the northern part of this map, and here they agreed that the two countries will cooperate in jointly develop this area. On the other hand, there are other agreement stating that Chinese enterprises welcome that Japanese corporations will participate according to the Chinese laws and in the exploration and exploitation of offshore petroleum. Now, in 2008, this was considered as a development in the cooperation of the utilization of the East China Sea. But afterwards, the two countries got deteriorated relationship, and afterwards, the cooperation never took place. Furthermore, there is the unilateral development on the Chinese side that China, actually has established the maritime constructions and to exploit the continental shelf. And you can see that it is all situated in the Chinese side of the equidistance line. But Japan has claimed that this is contrary to international law because it is within the potential entitlement of Japanese continental shelf. The other issue that I have to highlight is that Japan will not be able to use the dispute settlement mechanism under UNCLOS. Now, as you know, UNCLOS has a very strong dispute settlement mechanism under Article 287. And since Japan has not chosen the judicial mechanism under paragraph 1, if in event that Japan makes a court claim against any country, it will have to rely on paragraph 3, which is the arbitration tribunal that is established under Annex 7 of UNCLOS. However, China has made the declaration under Article 298, paragraph 1, clause AI, stating that it will exclude the disputes concerning the interpretation or application of the maritime delimitation under Article 74 and 83. So that means that Japan cannot use this dispute settlement mechanism to ask the court to delimit the overlapping area. Now, there might be a room to argue that the unilateral use of the continental shelf may not be excluded from the court's jurisdiction because it is not the maritime delimitation itself. But as long as it concerns the interpretation of paragraph 3 of Article 74 and 83, which provides that that the court should not jeopardize or hamper the reaching of the final agreement, then because the Article 298 says that Article 74 and 83 without distinguishing the subparagraphs, the court might not have jurisdiction to decide the case on the unilateral use of the overlapping area. Okay, so I think my time is up. So let me conclude. I'd like to highlight the significance of the rule of law, which is obvious, but it includes not only the compliance to the convention, to the binding agreements, but also to follow the general principles of international law, such as good faith or the international cooperation. We've seen that there's a limits of the judicial process, but it does not mean that the countries are allowed to do whatever they want, of course. And because of the stake that we are looking at concerning the maritime delimitation, the importance of the dialogue and cooperation should be again highlighted. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you for your attention.
Ishii-san, thank you very much. Today, we really learned many interesting and important things from prominent experts from Turkey and Japan. I think it is time to focus on a new cooperation issue. Turkey and Japan can make joint research on marine resources and can contribute to the prosperity of the whole people. Fortunately or unfortunately, today the whole world is focused on the talks in Antalya between Russia and Ukraine. Hopefully, they can find a solution to stop the war. We will be loading this panel to our YouTube channel, and we will do it soon. And in 2 months, we will be publishing the presentations both in Turkish and Japanese, we hope. So thank you very much again for your participation and contribution. Hope to welcome you, Turkey, soon. So, yeah, today is our time is, we had a limited time, but really, I would like to thank all the speakers because close future, near future, I think there will be more arguments about these maritime issues. So thank you very much again, Kobayashi-san, Masuoka-san, Ishii-san from Japan, Özan Hoca, Karan Hoca, Altay Hoca from Turkey. I would like to thank Japanese Embassy again. We organized this panel together with the support of Japanese Embassy. And also, I would like to thank the staff of APAM, Yalçın Kayalı, Professor, Vice Director of APAM, and the other personnel. Thank you very much. Is there any question? Is there any adding comments? If you have, please go on. Okay, I think we don't have. So thank you very much again. And I will talk with Hakan Karan Hoca after COVID. Inshallah, maybe we can organize a panel, this time face-to-face, maybe in Antalya, right? Hakan Hocam? Sesiniz, your voice.
Okay. I hope we'll have this chance to be together in person with our Japanese colleagues. As far as I know, Turks are a little bit more ready to do so, but in Japan, I believe that the doors are not really open yet because of the COVID-19. But in any case, I mean, I hope that we'll do it in Antalya, Istanbul, whatsoever. I mean, we are ready for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is a good news. Good news from Hakan Hoca. So hopefully we can see each other. Thank you again. Thank you very much. And hope to see you again this time in Turkey, inshallah. We appreciate for your cooperation. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And
Thank
see
you very
you
much
again.
for all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Evet, çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Tüm katılımcılara, APAM ekibi sizlere de çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Eğer söyleyeceğimiz bir şey yoksa değerli hocamıza da teşekkür ediyoruz. Yavaş yavaş sistemi kapatalım. Koray hocam tekrardan teşekkür ederiz.
Ben teşekkür ederim.
Masuoka-san, arigatou gozaimashita. Domo, minasan, arigatou gozaimasu. Domo, suimasen deshita.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Arigatou gozaimasu.